how does retention actually work? And what is it doing in our lives that causes the things that we experience to happen? And how can you, as an individual who may not be on retention, better understand this so that if you do get on it, or when you do get on it, you will be able to better understand and see what you need to be looking out for. And now you will have contextual information for when you go into it. You will know what's happening instead of guessing, causing you to panic and go into something, what we call a panic relapse, something that would cause us to doubt our own mind and our own understanding because we didn't do the proper research before. But that is what I'm going to be talking about today. And I got some visual representation right here for you guys. So, this is retained. You see this? Yep. Not retained. Okay. You've probably seen something similar to this if you watch other retention videos, right? So what are these right here? These are frequencies. So this is a frequency that we would consider a high frequency. And this is a frequency that's kind of all over the place. The not retained frequency doesn't matter as much, except for the fact that it has a visual comparison between retention. When we're on retention, right, we are at a fundamental level inside of ourselves in a higher vibrational state. This is what I call vibrational energy, right? Higher vibrational state, right? So in this higher vibrational state, we have a lot of things associated with goodness in life. That goodness also in peace and joy and our goals and the things that we love the most in life for good reasons, not for bad reasons, the things that we love the most in life for good reasons exist in this state. In the not retained state, we don't have a frequency. We lose the ability to constantly maintain vibrational energy, and so we don't have one. It's not constant. It may be there, but it's not. It's in the background and we can't feel it. And so it's basically, you may be able to get into a really high in life, which corresponds to a associated really low. And maybe you could be in that low for a longer period of time, and maybe your vibrational energy at one point in time is just aligned. Maybe you're not vibrating at all. Maybe nothing's happening, right? So when we understand the not retained part, we can see that in comparison, retaining shows us that there is something more significant there. Now, let's say you spend, I should add one more thing. This is who you are, okay? Who you are is the most important focal point of retention. We need to understand, if we want to understand how retention is playing out in our lives, we need to understand that it is acting on the basis of who we are, okay? And I've gone over this in other videos, but who we are is a mix-up of everything that we do and the way we conduct ourselves in everything that we do, right? So it's the decisions we make and why and how, right? It's all the associated factors with what we do in life. I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but I just want to explain this. Let's say you're not retained right now or whenever, I don't know. Let's say you spent 10 years not retained. 10 years not retained in this constant state of fluctuational vibration that has no resonance, and it is not consistent. It's never been consistent, and it hasn't brought about much goodness, or at least it hasn't brought about goodness that you genuinely love. And let's say in this 10 years, you have made friends. You have made a career. You have made, I don't know, money. You have made a relationships, and a wife. Let's just say, I don't know, GF, whatever. Let's say in these 10 years, you've made some significant bounds, right? Maybe in life, but the bounds that you've made, right, are in this non-retained state, right? And this, remember, we got to understand, this plays the most important factor into who we are. And that's the big thing. All these things, maybe you're unhappy with all of them, or most of them, or one of them. Maybe you're unhappy with one of them, but you got to ask yourself, was this thing achieved in this state? Was this thing achieved with retention in mind? Was it achieved on a streak of 30 days? Was it achieved on a streak of 10 days? Was it achieved on a streak of 60 days? How well is the things in our lives something that we are the things in our lives something we genuinely love because we ourselves were able to love ourselves, or we ourselves were able to be at that high frequency when they came to us? Or is it that, we've been in this state for so long, right, that when we go back to look at them, they're pretty rough. They're pretty not where we want them to be. So let me explain this real quick. Let's say you were retained for 1 year, right, in a higher frequency state, right? And I'll just go through some of the benefits that guys experience on the retention journey. And maybe I can talk about a bunch of these in a different video, but 1 year retained. And let's say during that year, GF, money. Let's say you got a better car. I don't know. Let's just say that happened in 1 year. We're going to add some more bullet points so that you can fill them in with your mind. So let's say you did that in 1 year, right? This is something that's very common. People experience money coming to them. They experience increased luck. They experience all sorts of different things while on retention. But what we need to understand is that these things are going to be much more fulfilling. The things that we're achieving in the state of retention are going to, number one, play into who we are more, right? Because it's going to be in a state that we genuinely respect. And if we're not someone that we genuinely respect, okay, I've also gone over this. If we're not someone we genuinely respect, then being in retention, right, will be something that causes you to start to genuinely respect yourself, because you're going to display attributes that you wouldn't otherwise. But these things that we're achieving in the state of retention are the things that make life much more meaningful, right? Because, for instance, family is one of them. This isn't something you're achieving, right? But let's just say it's a pillar of life, right? It's just a thing that you have in life. I've noticed many times that when I get on a long streak of retention, my relationship with my family, the people around me in my family are so much more helpful, so much better. I'm getting along with them better. And because of that, I feel a better connection with life, with the world, with all of them. And it's a beautiful experience, right? So something that I already have, right? The relationships that I already have in retention becoming better. And as a result, those people, right, begin to associate you with this vibrational energy, this kind of guy, even if you're not in it 100% all the time. Okay, so we need to understand that this is the most important factor. Being retained is the most important factor in who people think we are, in who we believe we are. If we build up enough good attributes living in this state of retention, or enough good achievements living in the state of retention, well, then we have a laundry list of things that says, our life looks like this, and that was while we were retained. That was while we were at the higher frequency, and that was the result, because we were the retained man. We were not the not retained guy. We were not the drained person, okay, who cannot achieve the meaningful things, who the man who already has those things but is drained does not get to experience the beauty and depth that the man on retention gets to experience in everything that he achieves, number one, but also in all the people, all the relationships, all the amazing things that come into his life, right? All the careers, all the jobs, all the money that he gets, even the physical things, right? A man on retention will be able to enjoy more fully something that means something to him, right? Like a nice car, or a nice cigar, or a nice, jacket or something. On retention, he will be able to appreciate that much more than the man who is not on retention. And these are all things that I've understood, I've come to understand. But while we're on retention, right, we need to see that if we are achieving a lot off retention, is that something that is actually fulfilling our lives? And did we think properly about that? And if we were in retention, what would that guy say 60 days down the line? Because here's the thing, 1 year retained. This is consistent, by the way. I'm talking 1 full year straight retained. You're going to have a pretty damn good understanding of what it's like to be living in the retained energy. But let's understand this. And I'm just going to talk a little bit right here. We don't want to get things mixed up, all right? When we hop on retention, there's a couple subtle things that come into play, right? And make us think that things are coming to us as a result of who we are, or things aren't coming to us as a result of who we are. It's rather that the universe is doing something. It's like we're favored in the sight of the universe, or favored in the eyes of God. No. We need to understand who we are. So, because this explains, right? This is the most important thing, because this explains why people care, right? If we don't understand that this is something that is changing us, right? And it's something that's changing other things, then we start to believe that we have the power over other things or other people. And that's not the case. We don't, right? So a big thing is we have the power. That's a big one that shows us that if we have the power, then we can do whatever we want. This is a big pitfall that we fall into. If we have the power, then we can do whatever we want. No, you do not have the power, man. You're not that guy. You do not have this associated power, okay? The power is coming from something that's already been given to you. You have been given the gift of retention. You have been given the gift of your reproductive system. You have been given the gift of your life. And the power has always been there. You are just now acting in accordance with what works. So, another thing is we're acting properly. Or wait, hold on. I guess we're acting improperly, right? That's the big pitfall, is we're acting out of the norm, right? So this, one of the biggest things is that retention, what it does is it shows us that this is how life should be lived. Because this is, it's not like you retain and you get one thing in return. It's not like you retain and you get, let's say you retain for the purpose of getting a nice car and you get a nice car in return. No, you retain and you get a lot of other things. You get things that you wouldn't predominantly think of. In fact, you get things that you may be worrying about the most, which is confidence, which is tenacity, which is determination. You get things that are deep, intrinsic, and they start inside of you. They don't start from the outside. There's something that you inherently get with retaining. It's not something that you learn. It's something that you receive, Okay, so first thing we need to understand is that what we're experiencing is a gift, and we're acting. And the reason why we're experiencing this gift is because we're acting normal. We're acting just as we always should have acted. Okay, and here's another thing. You need to understand that whatever told you to not stay retained, whatever told you to go outside of retaining, it was a trick. Okay, that was a trick. It was something that made you believe that retaining, right, is not necessary and does not heed results. Okay, there's a couple things associated with what that could be and why. Those are probably a little bit more personal, but we need to understand that we are acting normal in this scenario. And what we receive, right, we receive what we are due. So, we receive what we are due. That is another big pitfall. That's not true. We do not. Everything that we are receiving is a gift, number one, but it is also a gift in the context that even though it may be due to the fact that we are on a higher vibrational playing field, we are not due or owed anything because we are acting normal, right? So this raises a lot of questions as to why is this happening? Well, that's kind of your own personal understanding and own personal search, right? But as you get down the path of retention, you need to understand that you are not the main focal point. In fact, the less that you do this for yourself, the more you will get out of it. And let me repeat that. The farther you get down retention, you will understand the less that you do this for yourself, the more you will get out of it. And why that is because when we start understanding that we are being given a gift for a reason, right? Because there would be no reason to give us anything for acting normal. But instead, we are acting normal and we are being given something. So why? Right? Why is that? Right? It's not because we are owed it, because we aren't owed anything, especially considering the fact that we're acting normal. So why are we being given these things? For a reason, right? But here's another thing that I think is a big one. You must find purpose, right? You must find purpose. No. Purpose is inherent. It comes from the thing that I think, okay, hold on. Let me backtrack. You must find purpose. It's good. It's good to find purpose. It's good to find a reason for why you're doing the things in life, because that's what purpose is. What is the purpose of your life? What is the reason for you living, right? But hear me out. You do not have to find the reason for why you live, but you need, and I would highly suggest that you find the reason for why you do the things you do, right? Which is, yes, living, right? But it's more about understanding our behaviors. That way we can, because we kind of all understand where we want to go in life. We kind of all understand what we want to do, and that's going to be something that you discover slowly just throughout living, right? But if we can understand why we have the behaviors that we have, right? And retention is going to be something that shows you very blatantly why you are engaging in things for, and for what purpose. But if we find why we are living, right? If we find why we are making the decision we're making, we find and look back why we are the person that we are, then we can find purpose much easier. And also it may be much more natural to go about it that way, because then we have control and 100% complete decision authority over what our purpose is and how we want to go about living our lives. That will feel incredibly important to you, and it will feel incredibly important to your heart. It's a very big healing process. So you don't have to find purpose. This isn't a purpose journey that you have to set out on. No, it's just a journey. And along the way, you discovered a lot of things about yourself, and you discover that what is happening throughout this journey isn't that anybody else is changing, isn't that anything else is changing, isn't that the world is giving you this, isn't that God is telling you this or telling you that. No, it is that you just are changing. You yourself only are changing. And as a result, everything else is happening. As a result, there can be a lot of things tied to you, okay? Because when we put the blame and the responsibility on ourselves, right, then we become in control of it, right? That's why I've stressed this. Okay, so you must find purpose. Nope. What you must find, or I guess that's all the pitfalls I have, but what you must find is this. Retention is so incredibly important. That's really all I have for you guys today, but I just want to end with this. Retention is so incredibly important. I hope that this video shows you a little bit as to why things happen the way they do. But what we must understand is that if we are not living in retention for long term, right? If we are not living in a retained state for a long period of time, then we are not changing. And that is the most important part. You cannot keep cycling, because here's the thing, is if you go on retention, right, let's say for 10 days, right, or 10 days is pretty low. Let's say 14 days, right, 14 days, 2 weeks, which is enough to feel some benefits. You hit a cycle, right? You just cycle back to where you began all the time, right? You cycle back to where you began. It's just a constant loop. It's not that things don't get better in the moment where you retain for a longer period of time, or that the benefits aren't actually there. No, it's just that you constantly keep going back to this thing, and you really only have a little window of time for real growth, right? And we need real growth to happen on this. If we don't have real growth, then we have no reason to be doing this, okay? We need real commitment, okay? If we want to change, if we want to be a better human being, right, outside of retention, or within retention, we need it to be lived in for long periods of time. Because when we live in this, like the first example, for if we live without retention, we build a life, right, that is on the lower frequency, on a irrational, all over the place frequency. But if we build a life on retention, then we build one that is on a constant frequency. We build one that is this, okay? We build a good life because we're able to make better decisions. So when we're on it for, let's say, 3 months, sorry, this is bad writing, 3 months, then we begin the cycle, right, that builds, and then we go to new places. We go all over the place, right? We don't go, and if we relapse, right, sorry, can you see that, right? We start the cycle, we build, right, and then we travel. We go to all different kinds of places in 3 months. We have lived in it for a significant amount of time. That's why 3 months feels way better than a couple weeks, right? Because we change. We're all the way over here now, right? And that doesn't mean when we relapse, we go all the way back to the beginning. No, we've traveled far. We start the new journey here. Not that we lose progress, right? We may go back within and we have to start the loop again, but we have changed. We've seen the other side. We've seen what happens, okay? And if we can see what happens, right, then retaining can be 3 months later down the road, causing us to build stuff that is so incredibly important for our lives, right? Which means in 3 months, we can change any situation, right? Our career, our relationships, our money, our love, our family, right? Because these are things that are already in our lives. We can change these things when we live in them. We can not because we are the ones changing them, but these things could change when we live in them, because when they are lived in, that's when real progress actually happens, right? So I hope that that makes a lot of sense. But that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. If you have any specific questions for me, I hope the board was helpful. This is the first time I tried out this little nifty board, and I think it was pretty good. If you guys have any specific questions for me, you can leave them down in the comments, or yeah, just leave them down in the comments. If you have any video suggestions, leave them also down in the comments. If you like this video, like it, and if you subscribed, then I appreciate you, but I think you should subscribe for more beautiful, amazing videos. I try and post weekly, and I try and get you guys some good quality things that I've thought about, and I try and discern them before I come on here so that I can properly articulate exactly what it is I'm trying to speak about. And I hope that most of you guys are staying retained. If you have any genuine concerns or things that you need help with, I suggest going to Reddit. Some of the groups on Reddit, like retention groups, they help with a lot of other questions and a lot of other things, as well as Discords. There's a lot of Discords out there. If you don't feel super comfortable with that, look up SLAA groups in your local area. There's guys in person that are dealing with this stuff all the time, and there's groups talking about all different kinds of disorders within sex, and yeah, so it's something that, you know, is incredibly intense, and I understand that y'all are going through it, but I appreciate you actually trying. And that's one of the biggest things that we need to understand, is that, you know, maybe we aren't perfect at this, but we're actually giving it a shot. So yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you for being retained. I appreciate you for doing what you do, and I'll see you guys in the next one.